Hello and welcome back. Today I'm doing something a little bit different, mainly because one, I've recently watched this movie, and two, the internet is flooded with them, and I wanted to just throw my 5 cents in. You never know, this might become like the next big thing. I have no idea. So anyway, I'm going to be answering, well, in my personal opinion, I need to state that, is Captain Mar-Vell really that bad? However, before we get into this, I need to state there are going to be spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. I'm going to try and go into a lot of detail, and secondly, I'm going to try and remain as objective as possible, and I'll get onto that in 1 second. Now, obviously, there is a lot of controversy about Brie Larson's personal opinions on a variety of different things about sexism, equality, etc, etc. Now, I need to state from the off, I am a white male, and I have been to see this movie despite hearing of Brie Larson's personal opinions. However, I am of the opinion myself that free speech is a given. Whether you believe or disavow in Brie Larson's personal opinions, that does not detract from the fact that that is Brie Larson's personal opinions. Just as I have the free speech capability to say I think she's a bit of a moron for openly stating that with her celebrity status and going to be causing a severe amount of backlash, which I do feel it has, she is still well within her rights to do so. So, with that out of the way, I am going to basically pretend I have never heard of Brie Larson before. Not knowing what she has said or done or believed, I've just gone into watching Captain Mar-Vell as a Marvel fan. So hopefully we can begin. Hopefully. Now I'm going to try and do this as a 2-point review, and what I mean by that is I'm going to assess and critique the movie on it as a movie. Cinematics, acting, script, blah de blah de blah de blah de blah. And then I'm going to critique it on how I feel it fitted into the Marvel Universe and things that I feel are just blatantly wrong. So hopefully this doesn't end up being too bad. So let's jump straight in with reviewing this just as a movie. Let's forget about the fact that there are other MCU movies out there, and let's forget about Brie Larson's personal opinions. How does it shape up as a film? Well, as the film starts, you are thrown into a random planet on a random location where Brie Larson is about to begin some training, which is all well and good, but at this point you have no origin to her. It's a bit of a film that plays a lot of flopping around due to amnesia, apparently, as she lost her memories. And it is actually quite apparent from the off that it's kind of hard to say this without sounding like a complete dick. Basically, in the Marvel universe, there are a lot of high-class actors, and in Captain Mar-Vell, there are co-stars along the likes of Jude Law, who I personally don't like. I don't know why. It's just something with his face. I just want to grab him and shake him. But he is still a very talented actor. And then you've got Samuel Jackson, who again is obviously a very, very talented actor. Now, I'm not going to try and say that Brie Larson is not a talented actress. she has won a few from what I have seen. I'm googling right now, as to be honest, I've forgotten what it's called. A Academy Award for Best Actress, and a few other things. That's like the most notable one, to be honest. BAFTA Award, Golden Globe. She's certainly decorated as an actress. However, it just feels from the off that in acting capability, she is not on par with her co-stars. At certain points, you come across a character, Maria Rambeau, played by Lashana Lynch, and honestly, during these scenes, I was much more engaged with the character Maria and her daughter, whose name completely escapes me. And for what is meant to be the star of the film, I honestly just felt that she's just overshadowed in a lot of the scenes that she does. With the certain scenes where she is interacting with Maria Rambeau's daughter, honestly, they just felt completely falsified. I don't understand why I felt this way personally, but it was just a bit weird. The easiest way I can explain it is particularly with the scenes with Maria Rambeau's daughter in the film, and there were certain films with Samuel L. Jackson or Nick Fury. They'd be having like a laugh and a joke, and you could tell almost, I mean, obviously in the back of your mind they're acting, so you know it's fake, but it's believable from these characters. But with Brie Larson, when she was laughing or having a joke, or on those rare occasions where she smiled, it was almost like, have you ever had like a friend who tells like a particularly raunchy or, you know, just unsavoury joke, and rather than going, "Sit down, Carl, you're an idiot," you sort of do that, you know, that really fake, unimpressed laugh? That's kind of what it felt like. It was too forced. It felt really bleh. Like every time she was on screen, it wasn't engaging. There were a few awkward moments where there was like a weird roaring, like actual full-on roaring or screaming match between Brie Larson and a Skrull, and it just felt awkward and misplaced, and just didn't really feel like it fitted in. It was a bit odd. Now that I've shared my opinion on Brie Larson's acting, I actually have a slight gripe with Samuel L. Jackson as well, but I don't feel this is his fault. Samuel L. Jackson, at the moment, after doing a quick wiki search, is apparently 70 years old. I don't know if Wiki's information is correct, but he is an elderly gentleman. And I won't lie, Mar-Vell have done a superb job on turning back the clock. He genuinely does look quite young. He's middle-aged, I'd say. Probably he's supposed to be early to mid-40s, judging by his appearance. However, there were, I think, 2 separate scenes in the movie where he was running. And I'm not trying to say he is in the worst condition ever, but you could quite easily tell that when he was attempting to move at a decent speed, i.e. running, he was certainly not of the age that he is portrayed to be. You could definitely tell he's either had a hip replacement or a knee injury, or he is old. And I know that sounds like a really weird gripe, but I kind of enjoyed the illusion of a young Samuel L. Jackson. I often watch Pulp Fiction just to remind myself that this man isn't actually a god. You know, he has aged. But I was enjoying the illusion, the immersion that Samuel L. Jackson has somehow found Bernard's watch and turned back time, and suddenly you see him run, and it's just like, well, there goes that illusion. back to reality, which I just found really, really awkward and off. But that's just me. Then there's this critter, and I'll try not to spoil it too much. There is a problem when this cat, called Goose, is the highlight of the film. There really is. There is an absolute problem when you're excited when the cat comes on camera. And you're like, ugh, Bree again. When Bree's on camera. The cat was genuinely amazing. I loved the implication or how they implemented the cat, and like, you get subtle hints throughout the movie of the cat. But there was one thing that really kind of bothered me is in the comics the cat's name is Chewie. In the film it's Goose, which I think is a nice homage to Top Gun, as she is a pilot. I think that was quite a nice little homage. However, Chewie or Goose is supposed to be Carol Danvers' cat, and the negligence in which this was portrayed was, for me personally, as a Marvel fan, actually quite hurtful. It's just like, this is meant to be your Catwoman. I don't know whether it's because I've got cats, and yeah, I love my little kitty keys. Then you have these guys, the Skrull, and I kind of feel that these were actually implemented pretty well. There was a bit of a narrative at the start which sort of leaned you one way, and then there was a twist that leaned you another way, and all the while Carol Danvers, or Captain Mar-Vell, is trying to fight with her conscience and trying to figure out who she is and get her memories back and trying to pick a side. And I get that she's meant to be military in the 90s, and like, you know, she's had some things done to her and some sciencey stuff, experimentation, and she's been on an alien planet and indoctrinated into believing X, Y, Z. But at a certain point, Talos, the general of the Skrull, lays down all of the facts and a fair amount of evidence in front of Captain Mar-Vell, and I don't know whether she was intended to be played this way or just generally is, but she basically came off as an arrogant, pretentious, obnoxious bitch who should have just got slapped across the room. It was very uncomfortable to watch this scene, because it was a very almost heartfelt performance delivered by, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this name, Ben Mendelsohn. Ben Mendelsohn, perhaps. He really, you could tell he put a lot into that particular scene's performance, and it almost kind of felt like, I don't know whether it was meant to be portrayed this way, but it almost just sort of felt like the character of Carol Danvers was just meant to be negligent towards the entire thing. It's almost like she forgot the words, she just winged it, and what came across was just this very bleh performance. It was quite peculiar, to be perfectly honest. But quickly, the Lashana Lynch and Jack Nicholson, that was weird, Samuel Jackson enter the scene, and you kind of start to feel a little bit more comfortable again, hopefully. Now, one of my favourite things that I actually, well, it's one of my most dreaded things, but also one of my most favourite things with the MCU, is how they adapt the origin stories, how certain things happen, and how, well, essentially how some of these people obtain their powers, particularly in this case, how Carol Danvers got her powers. Now, I won't lie, I am not the biggest Marvel fanboy going. There are others that are so much more influential and have so much more information on this. But I've done a quick bit of research because I wasn't really a big Captain Marvel fan. I had heard of Captain Marvel beforehand, but it was just, for me, it was a bit of a weird statement to have yourself a character named after your own publishing comic company. I mean, what's next? DC, man. Oh, that's possibly also a thing, I don't know, sorry. Yeah, so Captain Marvel was never really something that interests me, and to be perfectly honest, didn't really care too much until she was thrown into the MCU all willy-nilly. But willing to give it a go, and had to do a little bit of research just to see sort of like her mainline canon origin story. And short and ugly version is she was testing an experimental aircraft. I'm not even sure if this is correct, someone might be able to help me out. She was testing an experimental aircraft, something went wrong, she ended up on an alien planet with an alien species called the Kree and a particular individual known as Mar-Vell. 2 words, or hyphenated rather, Mar-Vell, not Marvel, Mar-Vell. And there was a certain scene as well which kind of annoyed me, of where the film did a sort of self-publication, and basically Carol Danvers is going Mar-Vell and Samuel Jackson character Nick Fury is going Marvel. It's easier to say. It's just sort of like, that's a weird way to go. Anyway, I digress. On this alien planet within the comics, I believe Carol Danvers and Mar-Vell came under attack. Mar-Vell sacrificed himself or died somehow protecting Carol Danvers, and during his death transition into the afterlife, he passed on his capabilities, his powers to Carol Danvers, and that is how she became Captain Marvel. At least that's how I understand it, as the short and ugly version, as it were. Now for the MCU's version, she experiences a plane crash on Earth after being shot down by a Kree spaceship, and the engine explodes, and the explosion of the engine infuses with her, because it's a weird scientific experimental engine, and the radiation, I assume, fuses with her and she becomes Captain Marvel. Upon seeing this, the pilot of the Kree spaceship that shot her down is like, oh my god, she's so awesome, she's all glowy and stuff, kidnaps her, takes her to the Kree homeworld of Hala, and she's basically indoctrinated and trained as a Kree soldier because she's special. Yeah, considering that the person that shot Carol Danvers down in the first place was there for a very, very specific objective. He was supposed to be some highly trained Kree operative, almost like Spec Ops styled thing, and he's completely abandoned his mission to kidnap a random Earthling to take her back to his planet for training. Honestly, if you can't see a flaw with that, I have no words. Anyway, overall, I'm aware it's not been the most in-depth review ever, but to be perfectly honest, if you haven't quite figured out my stance on this film by now, then yeah. I suppose a polite way to put it would be Brie Larson's acting isn't bad. She was just completely overshadowed by what I would call higher class A-tier actors. I mean, I don't think it's going to be of any offence to her, but I think if you put anyone next to Samuel Jackson, people who play, even if he was just meant to be sort of like a sub role, like only have like a smaller part in the film, you're going to be paying more attention to Samuel Jackson just because, well, it's Samuel Jackson. But even still, Brie Larson's character did seem disingenuous and just disconnected from the overall movie experience. It wasn't really engaging. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what movie she actually won her Best Actress award for, because unless it was Terminator, where she plays an emotionless cold woman or robot, really, I'm having a hard time actually believing it, because it was a very emotionless performance. There were some very questionable plot points. CGI wise, I mean, as always with the MCU, it's very impressive CGI and special effects, but there were certain points where it is just, the whole screen just lights up with fuzzy lights. It's just like, honestly, if I wanted to watch this, I'd go watch a fireworks show. There were points where it was just completely overwhelming with CGI, and if I didn't have epilepsy, I have now. So, honestly, it's kind of a tough one to review, because you kind of want to like it because it's a Marvel film. And regardless of Brie Larson's standpoint on political points, you want to go and watch it because very clever marketing. They've brought it out just over a month ahead of Endgame, which people are going to want to see. And apparently Brie Larson, or Captain Mar-Vell, is the ultimate combatant to Thanos. So you're going to want to go watch it just because you want to know where Captain Mar-Vell's coming from. It's pretty clever marketing. However, I don't think the film really lives up to the MCU's hype or standard. As a standalone film, potentially, I don't think it would do too bad, but as an MCU film, it's just a bit dull to watch. It's almost like they've just gone, never mind these bad points, look at all the shiny CGI, and then after a while you're like, enough with the CGI, Jesus Christ, can I have the cat and Samuel L. Jackson back please? Because yeah, that's basically all that was for me going for the film. I mean, I've already stated, well, every other actor or actress was just, for me, so much more engaging. So, on a whole, as just a movie, I would probably give this film a 7 out of 10. And I feel that is being very generous. So now we need to get into how I feel this film actually fits into the MCU, and it will be affecting my score of 7 out of 10. That's basically just on the film, and things will change basically. Now, like I said, I'm a bit of a Marvel fan. I'm not the biggest fan going. I don't really have sort of the time to sit down and read a comic or a graphic novel, and if I am going to read, I prefer sort of things like H.P. Lovecraft and Tolkien. A bit more of a substantial read, I would argue. I'm nothing against comics, but you know, if I'm going to get into like the Marvel side of things, I'd rather be chilled out on the sofa with a whiskey in hand watching a movie with the wife, maybe go to the cinema. So I prefer, just out of time constraints, I prefer the Marvel Cinematic Universe rather than the canon comic book universe. So the points I'm going to be bringing up here are going to be purely based on the cinematic universe, and instantly there was one huge thing that cried out to me as pure wrong. Like, absolutely hated it. And I hated it that much that 7 out of 10, that just on this point alone, it's very tempting to put it to 0. I might be reaching here, might be giving it a bit of a stretch, but this is just genuinely how I feel. Now, again, if you haven't really minded my spoilers so far, they're about to get a huge jump up. You've been warned, because I'm about to go into it. Right, so that engine that Carol Danvers shot, and the explosion and the radiation released from this explosion, or whatever you want to call it, that turned her into Captain Mar-Vell. The engine itself was powered by the Tesseract. There are two flaws of this. That means that SHIELD, or the US government, still at this time had possession of the Tesseract. But yet in Avengers Assemble, the Tesseract is this completely alien thing. This, for me, is a serious and huge plot hole. You would think that if they actually had possession of this at some point, it would be in some secret file somewhere, where at the time of Avengers Assemble, director Nick Fury would have, I don't know, some bloody information on what the hell is going on. Apparently not. Second point is, the Tesseract, as we all know now, is basically a container for the Space Stone. An Infinity Stone is what has caused Carol Danvers to become Captain Mar-Vell. And yet Feig, I can't remember his particular role, I think he's like the MCU creative director or something, could be wrong there, but he has openly stated that Captain Mar-Vell is more powerful than Thanos. A being that was birthed from one Infinity Stone is stronger than a Titan who, yes, the Infinity Gauntlet got a little bit messed up at the end of Infinity War, but it was quite clearly still functional, hence how he was, I'm assuming we've all seen the fan theories and whatnot where they've analysed it frame by frame, and you do see when he escapes after doing his click or snap, you do see the wound in his chest from Stormbreaker get that weird lightning-y, glowy stuff over it, which would indicate he's trying to heal himself. He also does teleport out through a portal by use of the Space Stone, so it is quite clear that although damaged, the Infinity Gauntlet is still functional. So Captain Mar-Vell, who is birthed, and you could argue, I don't know whether she is, you could argue she would be on a similar-ish power level to one Infinity Stone. And she's going to be going up against a genocidal maniac Titan who has just annihilated half the universe, so his mental faculties and morality might not exactly be in place, but he has 6 Infinity Stones. 6. Personally, if Captain Mar-Vell does some form of just complete whitewash of Thanos, honestly, I am going to be absolutely fuming. That is a very cheap, very nasty, unimaginative, unentertaining way to end the Avengers Chronicle within the MCU. Why do I say that in particular? Well, at the end of Infinity War, we see Scarlet Witch, who was experimented on using the power of the Mind Stone. So she was birthed again using an Infinity Stone. And it is quite clear as well, and it was, you could argue, very heavily hinted at, that she is actually probably one of the more powerful characters within the MCU as well. Towards the end of it, where she's using her powers to destroy an Infinity Stone. So yes, you're going to argue she is absolutely badass, but she is using her powers to destroy an Infinity Stone, and she actually does. She destroys the Mind Stone. So not only is she destroying the Mind Stone, but she is also simultaneously holding, well, at one point she originally knocks him back and causes Thanos to stumble. Thanos then has to regain his footing, and after that it's clearly a struggle for him, and he is able to push back and make his way towards the Scarlet Witch before being able to knock her aside to then remove the Mind Stone from Vision. And you could say that she's not using her full potential. She was probably using more of her power to try and destroy the Mind Stone, etc, 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 blah de blah de blah. But still, that is the power of a Infinity Stone infused person against Thanos. Yes, you can hold him back and you can knock him around a little bit, but the result there was still the same. He closed the gap, and it was slow and it looked like it took a bit of effort, but he closed the gap and he kicked the crap out of pretty much everyone. And in order to actually do that, by the looks of it, he didn't even use an Infinity Stone to do that. That was just his pure brute strength from his particular species within the MCU. I think he's like, the class was like a mutant titan. He's not pure titan, he's sort of like a deviant or deviant titan or something. I can't remember the thing, but basically he is stupid powerful even without the Infinity Gauntlet or use of the Infinity Stones. He is a very, very powerful being, and apparently Captain Mar-Vell will change all this when the Scarlet Witch couldn't do it and she was birthed of an Infinity Stone. You even had Vision, who was forged and made of vibranium, I believe, as well as actually having implanted in him the Mind Stone. The guy was literally a walking Infinity Stone, and they still got their heads kicked in. So I'm sorry, I cannot see for the life of me how Captain Mar-Vell will change this. Now, there was a interview done with Samuel Jackson, and he stated, whether this is true or not, the fact that he stated this is true, but whether or not we'll ever see this, or whether this is actually part of her ability toolkit, Samuel Jackson stated that Captain Mar-Vell is like one of the only MCU heroes that has the capability of time travel. Again, I feel this is also a very, very cheap way to go if they do this, simply because we had Doctor Strange with the frigging Time Stone. Sorry, I'm just I don't get why they would go that route when they literally had like the Sorcerer Supreme with an Infinity Stone capable of time travel and turning back time. He beat possibly the wrong word, but he outmaneuvered and outsmarted an interdimensional deity, Mugamu, by just use of the Time Stone. If they go that route, then I literally see no reason why during the conflict on, I think it was on Titan or Jupiter's moons, where Iron Man and Spider-Man and a few others, including Doctor Strange, were having a conflict with Thanos, why they literally just couldn't have done some weird time travel stuff there and just kicked the living crap out of Thanos on repeat for all eternity, because there would have been a way. If Captain Mar-Vell can do it, who is just born of an Infinity Stone, then Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, who has the full use of an Infinity Stone, can do it as well. I'm just calling it there on that one. That's just if they go this route in Endgame, yeah. And honestly, I just can't see Captain Mar-Vell being that powerful, particularly when in the movie, I mean, yeah, she kicks the living crap out of them, and you could say she does it with relative ease, but she does get thrown about just by general Kree warriors. Like, Jude Law is like throws her about all over the place until she has enough, and then just like photon blasts him across the frigging desert. Like, she gets thrown about, she gets like metal thrown at her, and you can I wouldn't say she was struggling, but it was enough of an instance to sort of go, and you're going to beat Thanos, how? I don't think so. It doesn't add up at all. And it's been very, very heavily hinted, or even in some instances stated by the MCU, that she will beat Thanos because she is simply more powerful. Judging by how she's been portrayed so far, along with her origin story and the comparisons you can make to others' origin stories, she is no more powerful, or should be no more powerful, than the Scarlet Witch, who was beaten by Thanos without the use of Infinity Stone. Vision, who in essence should be the most powerful one of all of them. He is an android or cyborg, I don't know, a full-on friggin' robot forged of vibranium, one of the most dense and toughest metals going, with a mind stone literally implanted into his head. He was literally a walking Infinity Stone, and he couldn't even take on Thanos' lackeys, for crying out loud. I am sorry, no, Captain Mar-Vell should not be this linchpin that allows them to beat Thanos. So just on that, the 7 out of 10 has dropped to 5 at least. Now for my next point on this, this has gone two ways, because my wife absolutely loved this, and I personally found it disappointing. But we both see each other's point of view on this. So obviously, as we've all seen, Nick Fury has 2 eyes in Captain Mar-Vell. And it was heavily hinted that we are going to see how he lost the use of his left eye. So the premise here for this was director Nick Fury, ex-Special Forces, super sleuth, has all the pieces of the puzzle, sees the big picture, very intelligent, very capable, absolute bruiser of a man, really, really hardcore. You could even go into the whole toxic masculinity. I'm not going to go there, but basically he is a beast of a human. He is literally a human that is in charge of superhumans and is able to govern them just through pure force of will and seeing the bigger picture. How did he lose his eye? A frigging cat scratch, oh my god. And then you've got the other side of, how did he lose his eye? A frigging cat scratch, are you kidding me? Seriously, that's it? They do play this off. There's a particular line where, because Coulson's back, by the way, well, not back, it's time travel. Yeah, so you're introduced to Coulson. He's alive again, which I was really happy to see. There's a line where, towards the end of the film, or pretty much at the end of the film, where Coulson is asking, like, how he lost his eye. There's a rumour going around of how he was being tortured by the Kree and he refused to cooperate, so they burned his eye out. And Nick Fury's answer is, I can neither confirm nor deny that story, which does play off as like a whole sort of, again, it's like the whole both sides of why I didn't like it but my wife did. He's meant to be this like rather bravado filled hero that is governing S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's quite embarrassing for him to have lost his eye just by a frigging cat scratch. But then at the same time, it's also quite entertaining and funny. It's sort of, it kind of makes him feel more human. I get that, and a lot of people will like it, and I get the impression that a lot of people won't like it. but you know, it's 6 of one, half done as the other. I'll leave you to make your mind up on that one. But I kind of feel like, particularly as well, since they've done it this way, it will need to be addressed again in Endgame, which is interesting. Right. Really, really heavy spoiler now. I'm doing a lot of spoiler warnings in this. Anyone here know what a flirkin is? Foxtrot, Lima, Echo, Romeo, Kilo, Echo, November. That's how it's spelled, flirkin. Because everyone in Captain Mar-Vell is terrified of them. And if you don't know what a flirkin is, here, I'll show you a picture of one. The dreaded flirkin, ladies and gentlemen. Fear it. Yeah, this was a really, really interesting plot point. And I really actually quite enjoyed the implication of it, because it's heavily hinted at throughout the entire film. Because like whenever they pick the cat up, like you'll see someone go, "Oh my god, it's a flirkin!" and like be absolutely terrified and run away, and like the cow in the corner, and there's just this cute little kitty going meow meow. However, when you actually finally get a glimpse of what is a flirkin, it honestly just raised so many more questions than it answered. It really, really did. It turns out that flirkin is basically able to eat anything, and it stores what it eats in pocket dimensions that it can just create. I mean, that's just doing a really quick bit of research. There's probably a lot more to it, and that's basically again the quick and ugly version. But it can eat absolutely anything. So I'm just spitballing here, but unless Thanos' little snap has caused the flirkin to go all dusty, yeah. Why did Samuel L. Jackson, who actually adopts the flirkin at the end of the movie, just not throw the cat at Thanos? Like, to be honest, because it's a pocket dimension, and from the law of the Infinity Gauntlet, it has to be within its own dimensional universe in order to function. If it is removed from that dimensional universe, it doesn't work. Every dimensional universe has its own Infinity Stones, and only its own universal Infinity Stones work in its own universe. You remove them from that universe and they are basically just glowy rocks. So yeah, a flirkin could quite simply eat the Infinity Stones, the Infinity Gauntlet with the Infinity Stones in, or Thanos as a whole, and yeah, problem solved. Job done. Bye bye. Yeah. So adding all of these in with certain plot points, I'm going to try and basically ignore my one of Nick Fury. But main ones being that Captain Mar-Vell, for being more powerful than Thanos, gets kicked around a fair bit, and we've already seen just how powerful beings birthed of Infinity Stones actually are through Scarlet Witch, Vision, and even Quicksilver, who just got shot to death. Yeah, I don't really hold a lot of hope for Captain Mar-Vell, and if they do go that route as well, I think that's just a cop-out, personally. Overall score for Captain Mar-Vell, adding everything in through subpar acting. Honestly, the highlight of the film is just the cat and Samuel L. Jackson. I'm not saying motherfucker. Generally, overall, with serious plot faults, and just, I would almost say, bad scripting. Generally, I would have to go for a, at best, 4 out of 10. Anyway, that was a very spoiler heavy review. I do hope this was insightful in some way. Thanks for watching, good luck, have fun, and don't die. Ta-ra!